is the L7 from Avance. We call it the L7 because it's the 7-litre chassis. It's very small, like an ITX chassis, but actually you can see that it's a micro ATX chassis. So this is the smallest you can go with micro ATX, with the standard I/O shield at the back, and we have 3 expansion slots and AC in at the back, and your expansion card can just attach here and screw in. We also have the security here, so you can put the padlock loop in the back. So at the front we have a place for your logo. We have the SD card reader on the top, power button with a micro switch behind, and the blue LED will light up when the power is on. A slim optical drive, audio in and out, and also USB. And this is optional, USB 2 or USB 3, and we have an additional optional 2 ports for USB, whether USB 2 or USB 3, it's your choice. We can provide that function for you. There's also another optional front panel. As well as a different design, we can also include a smart card reader into the front panel fascia. So there's a couple of choices, not just the design of the front panel, but also the I/O for the front on the panel as well. So you can mount it or have it on the desk as a tower, or because it has the rubber feet, you can have it as a small form factor desktop. You can mount the monitor on top. But because the chassis is also small, you can see behind we have another feature which I'll show you in a second, where it can mount on the Visa stand. Before we go inside, I'll show you. What we do is we mount on these 4 holes some screws, and then the screw can mount onto the Visa stand. So I'll show you some of the extra features that we have on this chassis. So when it mounts onto the Visa stand, we have a cable management cover. And the cable cover, there's a place here for Kensington lock and a security screw, so that you can secure the cable cover onto the rear of the chassis to prevent any access to the I/O shield or the expansion slots, whether you've plugged in some cables or whether USB dongle. But also it keeps it tidy with cable management. So there's 2 functions, security and cable management. And when you mount it onto the chassis, onto the Visa stand, and you have the monitor on the front here, you also have front access to USB and audio. And this can be USB 3, plugging directly into the I/O shield on the motherboard. And then the monitor will mount here, and you can have height adjust on the monitor. And you can choose any monitor with Visa mount, and you can have the rotate function, 90 degrees, and you can see it's 100 or 75, depending on the monitor that you choose. And at the top of the Visa mount stand, we have a security screw, so that the chassis, when it's mounted onto the stand, cannot be removed. So you can have it secure. There's a clip on the top here, and this can release it or secure it. And it's just these 4 lugs that secure it onto the back of the Visa stand. So I'll show you the Visa stand just on its own. You can see it's tubular steel, coated, very strong, durable black coating. And then this is metal with plastic insert, and inside here we have the height adjust mechanism and pads here so the chassis doesn't get scratched. Very nice, cost effective, providing an all-in-one solution. So I'll put the stand back here. And you can see the chassis can be used still with the cable cover as a desktop for cable management. And now we'll go inside the chassis. I'll show you how to take the cable cover off the back. The cables will go through here onto the monitor, and it just simply attaches with these lugs. And this is where the security Kensington lock or security screw will go through and attach onto the chassis. And inside you can see the cables, how they'll plug directly onto the rear of the motherboard. So we have some thumb screws here. And I want to highlight two different features on this chassis. Not only is the front panel different, you can see we have two options here, changing the location of the power supply. So this one, the AC is here, and this one you can see a fan, because when we go inside you'll see different locations for the power supply to enable different motherboards to be used inside the chassis. So if I remove the top cover on this model, first of all, I'll bring your attention to our thermal solution. This is very unique, and this enables us to have a very small form factor chassis without any vents on the top cover. So nothing can be spilled or come inside the chassis. And this is very important because of the different environments that this chassis might be used. In a public user environment, in an office environment, even in education. If people have any liquids on the table, nothing can enter into the chassis. So that's why we provide this thermal solution where the air will come in to the rear of the case, and this air guide will clip onto the CPU cooler. Any standard Intel CPU cooler, that will clip on, and then this will attach, and you can mount the air guide onto the rear of the chassis, and the screw will go here. And because we have such a wide area here, it means that the air guide is flexible to move according to where the CPU is on the motherboard. Different motherboards will vary, and so we have some options and flexibility because we don't know what motherboards will be used in the future. And so also the depth of where it is in the chassis and the location horizontally. So if you can imagine, that will sit onto the CPU cooler. The air will come in here, push down on the CPU and cool the CPU, and then the air will be expelled from the front of the case. And this will be good for an i3, i5, even an i7 solution at 84 watts, no problem at all. So for assembling the chassis, it's very simple. Assembling all the components inside the chassis. We just remove the front panel, like so. And then we have these two clips here. You can just squeeze them together and lift up the optical cover. And this optical bracket will then give you complete access to where the motherboard will sit inside the chassis. So you have nothing obstructing you. It's very nice, easy to get inside and configure, assemble the CPU cooler, assemble the memory, and connect all the necessary cables. And you can see we mount a small form factor power supply. This model is from FSP, 80 plus bronze, 220 watts, and it's their form factor GST. And then we have a front fan to also expel the air from the front of the chassis. In this location here, we can mount a 3.5 hard disk. It's very simple. You can just attach the 3.5 inch hard drive here, and then this clip will locate where the screw should go on the hard disk, and then it secures it in place, and you can put one thumb screw here. So very easy and simple to assemble the hard drive. And maybe you don't want 3.5, but you have the option of using two 2.5 hard disks, which can also attach into this area here. Okay. We have a slightly raised area because we might have longer expansion cards in this space here. And so we give the choice of having a micro ATX motherboard with expansion cards. This is your USB cable, and this is your audio cable to plug onto the motherboard, and they come from the front I/O module here. And this can simply be replaced if you want to change it to USB 3. Very easy to replace this. In the top here we have a screwless function for slim optical drive, whether slot loading or tray, and you just assemble a clip onto the side and then it slots in, clips into place, and to release it just pull, slide out. Very simple assembly. This here is for the cables for the power switch and for the LEDs, hard disk LED activity, and they will just attach onto the motherboard. And for the fan, we have the 4-pin PWM fan, so it can adjust the speed of the fan according to the thermal conditions inside the chassis, and that will plug directly onto the motherboard where the pin locations are. From the power supply we have the cable running to the side, so you have AC in. And this is the screw accessories to do the assembly inside, and this is the clip for the optical drive, and you just attach that to the side of the slim optical to enable you to clip it in and out. So it's very simple, very easy, tool-free solution. Clip it in, attach the front panel, show you from this side. Attach the front panel. And don't forget, we said there's the SD card reader here on the front, and you could have the optional smart card reader here. And then assemble the top cover. Like so, and then the thumb screws at the back. So let me show you the difference of the other chassis. So this model will have some obvious differences with the location of the power supply. You can see here, if I lift up this optical bay and hard drive frame, you can see we locate the power supply here in the place where the expansion slots will be. And this enables us to put a full-length micro ATX motherboard in here, which will be completely square, because micro ATX is 24 centimeters this way, 244 mil, and the full dimensions of micro ATX can be 244 mil deep. And some motherboards require this full depth of the motherboard, according to Intel specification. Many motherboards are shorter, only 214 or 217, but in case the customer needs the full-length motherboard, we enable that by relocating the power supply here. And then you have the full space, and this is the maximum space required for micro ATX. And so we have a solution for all micro ATX motherboards in the smallest possible chassis. And here we have other ventilation solutions where we have the thermal ventilation on the top or the side, on both sides here. And because of the power supply being positioned here, we recommend these side ventilations to improve the thermal performance, because this occupies the space where the CPU will be, right next to it. And if necessary, we can also put the ventilation in the top cover, depending on the environment that the chassis will be put into. Everything else is the same, where the hard drive will mount, and the cables for the USB. And you can see this is where you mount the optional extra 2 USB, and it clips in like so. So we have 2 configurations for the power supply to accommodate different motherboards inside the L7 chassis.